Hello friends. So today we'll be talking about a small correlation between this desertification and climate change. Of course, climate change is one of the most sorted or discussed topic, right? We'll try to understand what is this desertification and what linkage it has with this climate change as such. Now comes the question, what do you mean by desertification? See, sometimes they say desertification is more like a region becoming a desert. That is one of the simplest definition what we have. Sometimes also people say it is all about the spatial expansion of a desert. Or to be very precise, if you ask me what is this desertification, my dear friend, somewhere we say desertification is the persistent degradation of a dry land ecosystem. Right? See, when I talk about dry land ecosystem, predominantly the ecosystems what we have in arid region and semi-arid regions, right? Semi-arid region, generally we call it as dry land ecosystems. Okay. When I just talk about, say, for example, the biomes, right, arid and semi-arid region, even if I'm just putting this arid aside, if I'm talking about semi-arid, right, particularly my dear friends, we'll be having this grassland ecosystem, right? The grassland ecosystem of tropical regions, very popularly, we call them as what? Savanna. We call them as savanna, whereas the grassland ecosystems in temperate regions, we call them as what? Steppe. Okay. To be very precise, what is desertification, right? It is all about this grassland ecosystem slowly and steadily becoming desert-like regions. We call them as what? Desertification, right? Those steppe, when I just talk about steppe becoming desertification or desert-like region, is very, very a rare phenomena. But what we are seeing in the global scenario, most of the savannas is fast becoming, say for example, right, in a fast forward fashion, it is becoming what? A desertified region as such, right? Now here, okay. When I just talk about desertification, as I already said, desertification is all about the persistent I already said desertification is the persistent degradation of the dry land ecosystem, transforming them into deserts, right, due to largely because of climate change, and not only because of climate change, my dear friends, it is also because of what? Human activity. See, for that case, I understand, even climate change, I understand, right, is one of the major reason is what? Human influence. Today, when I just talk about climate change, there is a $1 million question we ask, right? Is this climate change a natural process or a man-made phenomena? Normally, we say it is both. When I talk about climate change, global warming, or say, for example, the rise and the decrease in the temperature of the globe is very normal. For example, at least in the past, we have seen 3 cycles where the temperature of the globe has dipped and further it is increased. Correct? Now we are there in the 3rd cycle where the temperature is increasing. That is okay. Global warming is a very natural phenomena, but the rate at which the globe is warming, that is not natural. Whatever it is the case, right? Though I say it is a global warming, I understand, say for example, right, instead of calling it as a global warming, I would prefer a name called as what? Climate change. That is more holistic in nature. Okay. So I understand this climate change itself is anthropogenic in origin. That is okay. But whatever it is the case, my dear friends, right, when I just talk about this desertification, dry land ecosystem becoming, right, more like a desert, I understand, right, climate plays a very, very important role. When I just talk about, say, for example, the change in the pattern of precipitation distribution plays a very, very important role. Correct? That is very, very important, right? Some of the regions earlier it used to experience, right, a moderate precipitation. Slowly, steadily, the amount of precipitation is declining, right? More region coming under somewhere persistently experiencing drought-like condition will also result in what? Degradation of this ecosystem. Whenever I say degradation of the ecosystem, it is all about the productivity of that region declining. That's what it says, right? It is not simply the advance of the existing deserts, but rather than decline in the productivity of the land in arid and semi-arid regions. Okay, what is productivity? Very simple, right? Any food chain you take it, any biome you take it, you have something called as primary producers, right? Anything which produces food on its own, you call them as what? Primary producers. Put it very simple, flora. I am talking about flora. What determines the density of a biome is the production as an activity. Correct? So over a period of time, because of this climate change, because of the extended drought-like condition, because in the variability of the precipitation pattern, right, if at all if the temperature, say for example, if the rainfall reduces consistently over a period of time, the productivity of this land will also what? Reduce, right? Now, apart from that, what are the other human-related activity that can result or somewhere reduce the productivity of the land, if you ask me, right? Somewhere comes this unsustainable farming, right? Unsustainable farming, right? Number two, when I talk about deforestation, see, deforestation, my dear friends, will impact the precipitation pattern. Deforestation will be accelerating this soil erosion. Soil erosion will be reducing the fertility of the land. Eventually, it will be reducing the productivity of the land also. Overgrazing. Particularly when I talk about this dry land ecosystem, normally we will be having this grassland ecosystem. So, grassland ecosystem, grazing will be very, very common. Whenever it becomes overgrazing, again I understand we will be losing the fertility of that land as such, right? And then of course, I also talk about what? Mining. Mining will also reduce the productivity of this land. So whatever it is the case, eventually when a dry land ecosystem, right, particularly when I talk about grassland, if it starts becoming more like a desert, that is what we call them as what? Desertification. Or simply, I can say that, right, when I just talk about savannas of the land eventually becoming desert-like regions, this process we call them as what? Desertification, right? Right. Now, my dear friends, when I just talk about some of the regions in the world where desertification is very, 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 very intense, the outer margins of Sahara region. This is a place today where this very popularly we call this region as what? Sahel region. Sahel region is one of the most, right, almost say for example area which comes under the radar where we say that the desertification process is very, very intensified. Then again what I understand, the larger regions of West Asia and Southwest Asia also I understand, say for example, this desertification process is what? Increasing. Okay. And one thing I understand, most of the regions what I find, my dear friends, right, these are some of the places I find the grassland ecosystems of the world. For example, when I talk about the Western Americas, when I talk about the leeward side of Rocky Mountains, this is a place where I have this steppes, right? In American parlance, we do not call it as a steppe, we call them as what? Prairies, right? Again, when I just talk about some of the savannas of South America, right? Say for example, we have Campos of South America, right? We have Pampas of Argentina, right? And again, somewhere I understand if you're there, somewhere around this Kazakhstan region, right, very near to this Caspian Sea, again we have a steppe here, right? You call them as what? Kyrgyz steppe. So that's what I said. It is all about grassland ecosystem eventually becoming a desert-like region. We call them as what? Desertification. Okay. Savannas or steppe, right? More commonly, savanna becoming more desert-like regions, you call them as what? Desertification. And my dear friends, here if you ask me causes, right, what are the causes? Already I said, right, while discussing about the definition itself, I told you what is the cause. But the major cause, my dear friends, it is climate change. Because I understand climate change, right, sometimes may result in what? Drought. See, if climate change is resulting in flood may not result in what? Desertification. But droughts will be resulting in what? Desertification. That too, consistent, right? Recurrent occurrence of the drought will be resulting in what? Desertification. Number two, I said shift in the rainfall pattern. That will also result in what? Desertification, right? Slowly, steadily, if a region somewhere the precipitation amount starts declining over the period of years, that will be resulting in what? Desertification. Human activities, right? Among the human activities, I told unsustainable land management practice, right? Particularly when I talk about unsustainable agricultural practice, right? Particularly when I talk about this intensive agriculture. When I talk about agricultural practice, there are two types. One I call them as what? Extensive. Increasing area of the arable land, I call them as what? Extensive. Whereas when I talk about the land holding, if it is very, very less, people go for what? Intensive agricultural practice, right? It means use of more fertilizers, right? Over irrigation, correct? Somewhere I understand, right? All this intensive practice of agricultural, right, will be resulting in what? Or may result in desertification. Overgrazing, grazing, already I said, even deforestation will be resulting in what? Desertification, right? Again, taking the clue again, deforestation, as I said, clearing the land for agriculture, logging and others will remove vegetation. That is okay, right? That binds the soil, right, and protects the erosion, right? Once you start removing the trees, soil erosion will be accelerated. If soil erosion is accelerated, I understand the land productivity also will be start coming down, right? Overgrazing, whatever I have discussed here, somewhere, overgrazing. Excessive grazing by livestock can damage vegetation and compact the soil, making vulnerable to erosion. Again, say for example, deforestation, you're removing the tall trees. Overgrazing, say for example, right? The grasses what you have, right? The leftover, that is also if you're removing. Again, that removal of grass will be resulting in what? Erosion. Unsustainable farming, as I said, unsustainable farming, right? Over cultivation, improper irrigation can deplete soil nutrient and lead to salination. Okay, so two things are predominant, right? Number one, if by the nature or by the human activity, if the amount of water or the amount of precipitation is coming down, it may result in desertification. Number two, directly or indirectly, human activity, if it is somewhere resulting in accelerated soil erosion or, right, slowly degrading the soil, that will also result in what? Desertification, right? And my dear friends, though I have human activities, I understand the climate change and desertification is more like a vicious cycle. Okay, right, my dear friends. When I just talk about desertification, it is a result, and one of the major cause I understand it is all about what? Climate change.
Veranda IAS, where your dream becomes reality.